The louder you shout for attention, the quieter your power becomes. My friends, that one hits deep. Because the truth is, sometimes the most powerful thing you can ever say is nothing. Silence, the very thing people mistake for weakness, is often the moment your real strength begins to roar. Hey folks, imagine this for a second. You're standing in the middle of a battlefield, smoke, shouting, chaos, everyone swinging swords of words trying to prove who's right. And then suddenly you drop your weapon, take a deep breath, and walk away. The noise fades, the shouting echoes behind you, and in that moment you realize something wild. The silence following you is louder than anything you could have said. That's real control. That's Stoic power. You see, they expected drama, reaction, begging. They wanted to feed off your emotions like thieves in the dark. But instead, you gave them the one thing they couldn't handle: nothing. No explanations, no closure, just calm, unbothered, quiet. And that, my friends, is where their regret begins. Because regret doesn't come when you scream. It comes when you disappear. Rumi once wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." And that wound, that betrayal, that heartbreak, that moment they thought would destroy you, that's exactly where your light started to grow. They thought your silence meant defeat. But really, it was your rebirth. Because silence is not the end of a story, it's the beginning of transformation. Think about the ocean. It doesn't need to prove it's powerful by splashing around. It stays calm on the surface, but deep enough to swallow storms. That's what your silence becomes. Deep, steady, unstoppable. And those who once mocked your calm will one day drown in the weight of their own noise. My friends, let's break one of the biggest lies you've been sold. That being silent makes you look weak. That you have to chase closure, that you have to explain your worth to people who already showed they can't see it. No, no, no. The moment you stop explaining yourself, the game ends, because silence doesn't beg to be understood. It forces them to understand themselves. Imagine this. A magician walks onto the stage, ready to perform his tricks. He reaches into his hat, smiles at the crowd, but this time nothing comes out. No rabbit, no applause, just awkward silence. Suddenly, the magician looks lost. That's exactly what your silence does to manipulators. It pulls the curtain down on their little show and forces them to face their own emptiness. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And that's exactly what you've done. You stopped matching their chaos with chaos. You stopped giving attention to the noise. You stopped dancing for people who never learned how to hear music. And that, folks, is what drives them mad. Not your anger, but your absence. Because silence is a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. When you stop reacting, they finally see themselves, unfiltered, unmasked, and uncomfortably real. And trust me, that reflection burns. So here's the truth. Your silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's the sound of healing. It's the storm learning it can't control you anymore. And while they're out there trying to fill the void with noise, you're out here learning how to glow quietly. My friends, write this down in the comments right now. I choose silence. Say it, own it, feel it. Because from this day forward, your peace is not up for negotiation. You're not losing power. You're learning to use it differently. You're not disappearing. You're evolving. So press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because what comes next will remind you just how powerful your silence truly is. Number 1. They expected noise, but met silence. Never respond to provocation with emotion. That's how they win. My friends, that line might sting a little because it's the truth that almost nobody wants to face. You see, when you stop reacting, you take away their power. The moment your energy goes quiet, Their control starts to crumble. They don't know what to do when the storm they created suddenly stops swirling. They feed off your noise, your explanations, your anger, your defense. That noise was their oxygen. But silence? Silence is suffocation for manipulators. Imagine this. You're standing in a crowded theater. The lights are dim. The crowd waits in excitement. And there they are, performing on stage like they always do. Dramatic, confident, loud. They've done this show 100 times, guilt-tripping, gaslighting, twisting words. But tonight something changes. You, the audience they rely on, stand up, walk out, and close the door behind you. The show continues for a moment. They shout, gesture, demand attention, but no one's watching anymore. No one's clapping, just empty seats and fading echoes. That's what your silence does. It ends the performance they built their ego on. Now, I know what you might be thinking right now, but won't they think I'm weak? Won't they think I've given up? What if they don't care at all? That's fear talking, not truth. That's the survival voice inside you that was trained to believe love has to be proven through noise. That if you don't explain yourself, you'll be misunderstood. That if you don't defend yourself, you'll lose control of the story. But here's the truth. The story isn't yours to control anymore. It's yours to walk away from. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That's the lesson they never learned. They live in reaction. You now live in reflection. You stopped letting them dictate how you should feel, and that scares them more than your words ever could, because they can argue with your anger, they can twist your sentences, but they can't twist your silence. Think about this, my friends. When a fire runs out of oxygen, it dies, and that's exactly what happens when you stop feeding them your reactions. You take away their ability to keep the flames alive. They start gasping for attention, reaching out indirectly, posting things to get your response, pretending they've moved on. But deep down, they're suffocating because they don't know how to exist without your energy fueling their ego. Here's what's wild. Your silence doesn't just confuse them, it exposes them. It forces them to face the truth of who they are without the distraction of you. They begin to realize how dependent they were on the drama they created. You were their emotional anchor, even when they called you weak. And when that anchor is gone, they drift into their own chaos. But I get it. Choosing silence isn't easy. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do, because silence feels unnatural when you've spent so long explaining, fixing, forgiving. It feels like surrender when in reality it's strength. It feels like giving up when it's actually standing tall. And that's what makes this part of your journey so powerful. It demands discipline over emotion. Epictetus said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. That means every time you react, you give them permission to control you. But silence is refusal. Silence says, 'I'm not participating anymore.' And that terrifies them because their entire sense of power was built on your participation. Let's break the lie right here, folks. They told you silence meant indifference. That if you stopped responding, it meant you didn't care. But the truth is the opposite. Silence means you finally care about yourself more than the argument. It means you're done proving your worth to people who only listen to themselves. It means you're no longer chasing clarity from the same people who thrive in confusion. Think of silence like a mirror. It doesn't shout, it doesn't accuse, it simply reflects. And when they look into that mirror, they don't see your pain anymore. They see their own reflection, raw and unfiltered. They see the manipulation, the betrayal, the selfishness, all of it staring back. And trust me, that reflection burns more than any revenge ever could. Because your silence becomes the first time they meet themselves honestly. But here's where it gets even deeper. The silence that breaks them is the same silence that builds you. Because while they're unraveling in guilt and confusion, you're rebuilding in peace and clarity. You start noticing your thoughts again. You start enjoying quiet mornings without anxiety. You start remembering who you were before the chaos. And slowly your silence stops feeling heavy. It starts feeling holy. My friends, remember this. Lions don't roar at every barking dog. They keep walking, not because they're afraid, but because they know who they are. That's you now. You're not staying silent because you're weak. You're staying silent because you're wise, because peace is your new language, and not everyone deserves to be fluent in it. Let's be real. They won't understand your silence at first. They'll mock it, twist it, call it cold. But give it time. Silence always grows louder with distance. While they keep shouting into the void, trying to provoke a reaction, you'll be walking higher, calmer, stronger. And when they finally realize the noise isn't working anymore, regret will start whispering in their ear. That whisper will turn to a scream, and that scream will echo longer than any words you could have ever said. So if you're sitting there tonight wondering if your silence matters, let me tell you, it does. It's the loudest message you'll ever send. It's the final chapter they can't rewrite. It's the moment they realize you didn't lose your voice. You just stopped wasting it. Write this in the comments right now, my friends. I choose peace. Say it out loud. Show it to yourself. Show it to the world around you. Because when you say those words, you reclaim every ounce of energy you ever gave away. You remind yourself that your power doesn't live in your reaction. It lives in your restraint. And stay with me, because what comes next will open your eyes even wider. We've uncovered why your silence shocked them, but now we're going deeper into how that same silence becomes a mirror they can't escape. And that, my friends, is where the real burn begins. Number 2. Your silence became their mirror. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Marcus Aurelius said that nearly 2,000 years ago, and my friends, it still cuts through time like a blade. Because when the noise fades and the silence settles, the only thing left to hear is the sound of your own mind. And that's exactly what happens to them. When you go quiet, when you stop explaining, defending, or justifying, you hand them the one thing they've been running from their entire life. A mirror. Imagine a room lined wall to wall with mirrors. For years, you were the curtain that softened the reflection. You were the kindness that covered their cruelty, the forgiveness that hid their flaws, the patience that made their selfishness look like strength. But when you walked away, when you finally dropped the curtain, those mirrors came alive. Now everywhere they turn, every corner they hide in, they see themselves, unfiltered, unmasked, and uncomfortably real. And my friends, that's what drives them crazy. Not your silence, but what your silence shows them. You see, while you were speaking, they always had somewhere to hide. They could twist your words, gaslight your emotions, shift the blame. They could spin their version of the story until it sounded righteous. But silence gives them no script. It gives them no weapon. It gives them nothing but their own reflection. And that reflection is merciless. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't lie. It simply holds up a truth they never wanted to face. Now, some of you might be asking, but do they really think about me? Do they really feel regret in that silence? My friends, they do, but not in the way you imagine. Regret doesn't always show up as tears or apologies. Sometimes it shows up as sleepless nights, as restless scrolling at 2 a.m., as laughing too loud at things that aren't funny, as pretending they've moved on while a small voice inside keeps whispering, "You messed up." At first, they'll fight the mirror. They'll distract themselves. New people, new parties, new posts. They'll convince everyone, even themselves, that they're fine. But silence waits. It doesn't chase. It doesn't hurry. It sits patiently in the corner until the music stops, until the lights go out, until the laughter fades, and then it whispers, "Look." And that, my friends, is when the reflection hits them hardest. Let's break the lie they believe. They think silence means you don't care anymore. They think it's indifference. But silence isn't the absence of care. It's the presence of clarity. You're not punishing them. You're protecting your peace. You're not ignoring them. You're healing yourself. You're not being cold. You're being calm. And calmness, to those who thrive on chaos, feels like punishment. Think about it this way. Imagine someone who's been living in constant noise, cars honking, alarms blaring, voices shouting. They get used to it. They mistake noise for life. And then one day, the world goes quiet. No distractions, no excuses, just silence. At first, it feels strange, then it feels scary, because now they can hear the thoughts they've been avoiding. They can feel the emptiness they've been hiding behind. That's what your silence does. It turns off their distractions and turns up their conscience. Seneca once wrote, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests brave men." Your silence is that fire. It tests the parts of them that words could never reach. It burns away the illusions they built, that they were always in control, that you'd never leave, that your kindness was weakness. But gold doesn't fear the fire. Lies do. And let's be honest, this part isn't easy for you either. Silence isn't passive. It's discipline. It's you standing in your own truth, even when your emotions beg you to speak. It's you learning that peace doesn't come from being heard. It comes from being understood by yourself. At first, the quiet feels unbearable, but over time it becomes sacred. It's where you finally hear your own voice again after all the noise. My friends, remember this. The mirror of silence doesn't just reflect them, it refines you. While they're running from their reflection, you're healing in yours. You start to see the strength in your restraint, the beauty in your boundaries, the courage in your calm. And soon, the same silence that once felt heavy becomes your armor, invisible, unbreakable, untouchable. So if you've ever doubted whether your silence mattered, let me tell you, it does. It's the mirror they can't escape and the peace you were always meant to find. You didn't lose your voice. You reclaimed your value. You didn't walk away in weakness. You walked into wisdom. Write this in the comments right now, my friends. I am the mirror. Say it for yourself, not for them. Show it to the world around you, because your silence is no longer about proving a point. It's about reflecting truth. And stay with me, because next, we're going even deeper. You've seen how silence reflects their truth, but now we're stepping into the aftermath, the storm your absence created. And that, my friends, is where regret starts to burn. Number 3. Your absence became their storm. When the soul has no pilot, the winds of life drive it onto the rocks. Seneca wrote that centuries ago, my friends, and it still rings true today, because when you walked away, when your presence vanished and your voice went quiet, their soul lost its pilot. They thought they were steering the ship, but it was you holding the compass all along. Your peace guided their chaos. Your patience softened their storms. Your forgiveness covered their flaws. And the moment you stopped being their anchor, their world started to drift into madness. Imagine a house built on sand. For a while, it looks strong. The walls stand tall, the lights shine bright, and they invite everyone in to admire what they've built. But every storm that comes leaves another crack in the foundation. They ignore it, patch it with pride, decorate the damage with distractions. But then one day the storm hits harder than before, and this time you're not there holding the walls together. The foundation gives way. The house collapses. That's your absence, my friends. It's not emptiness, it's exposure. It reveals what was weak all along. You see, they never realized how much they depended on your energy to keep their chaos under control. They mistook your calm for compliance, your silence for safety, your kindness for permission. But when you stopped showing up, when you stopped absorbing their storms, the peace they borrowed from you disappeared. Suddenly, the noise inside them was louder than ever, and that's when the storm began, not around you, but inside them. Now let's be honest, this is the part that messes with your head. You start to wonder, what if they don't care? What if my absence didn't matter? What if they're happier without me? But my friends, that's the lie fear tells when healing feels too quiet. Because absence isn't forgotten, it's felt. You can replace attention, but you can't replace energy. You can copy affection, but you can't copy connection. They can fill their days with people and noise, but every night, when it gets silent again, your absence sits beside them like a ghost. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's what they never learned. They tried to control everything outside of them, your emotions, your reactions, your love, but they never learned how to master their own mind. And now that you're gone, they're left wrestling with the same storm they once hid behind your patience. Think about it like this. For so long they used you like an umbrella in their emotional rain. They'd rage and you'd calm. They'd break things and you'd fix them. They'd lose control and you'd forgive. You became their shelter. But when you finally folded that umbrella and walked away, they had to stand in their own rain for the first time, and the rain didn't stop. It just revealed how much they'd been hiding under your cover. And here's what's really ironic. They once called you the storm. Too emotional, too intense, too sensitive. But now they're realizing you were the calm in all that chaos. Without you, they're left with the weather they created. And storms, my friends, don't stop just because you're gone. They keep spinning until they destroy everything that refuses to change. But choosing absence, that's not easy, is it? It takes courage to walk away when your heart still wants to help. It takes strength to stay silent when your soul wants to explain. It takes faith to believe that letting go is not cruelty, but clarity. Yet that's exactly what Stoicism teaches, that peace is not found in control, but in acceptance. You accepted that staying meant suffering, and leaving meant healing, and that acceptance became your strength. The storm they're in now? It's the echo of every choice they made while you were still trying to keep things calm. It's every lie, every manipulation, every moment they took your love for granted, coming back like thunder. You didn't create that chaos. You just stopped absorbing it. And when you stop absorbing someone's chaos, they finally have to face it. My friends, let's break one more lie. They will tell the world that you changed, that you became cold, distant, heartless. But the truth is simpler. You just stopped being their shield. You stopped standing in the rain for people who refused to come inside. You stopped being responsible for storms that weren't yours to calm. Now, when they scroll through their phone and your name pops up, there's that moment, that flicker of memory, when the air changes, the heart tightens, because they remember how steady your energy felt. How peaceful it was to be around someone who didn't fight storms, but mastered them. And now that peace is gone. That's the ache of absence. It doesn't scream, it whispers, it doesn't beg, it lingers. So don't ever think your absence goes unnoticed. It's noticed every time they seek noise that doesn't comfort them, every time they laugh and it doesn't reach their eyes, every time they find themselves alone and can't escape the quiet. Your absence is the mirror their ego can't look away from. Write this in the comments right now, my friends. I am peace. Say it like a declaration. Show it to yourself. Show it to the world around you. because your peace doesn't create storms, it exposes them. And while they're out there drowning in their own waves, you're learning how to walk on water. Stay with me, because what's coming next will cut even deeper. We've seen how your absence became their storm, but next we're going to uncover the moment that breaks them completely. When they realize that no matter how hard they try, they can't replace you. That's when regret stops whispering and starts to roar. Number 4. When they realize they can't replace you. You never know the value of water until the well runs dry. That old proverb, my friends, is the anthem of regret, because people rarely recognize depth while they still have access to it. They take the well for granted until they're standing in the desert, thirsty, realizing the oasis they abandoned isn't coming back. That's exactly what happens when your silence stretches long enough. At first, they think they can replace you. They think you're just another chapter they can flip past, but soon they realize you were the whole book. Picture this. Someone spends years living by the ocean, the waves, the salt, the breeze. It's all just background noise to them. Then one day, the ocean vanishes. What's left is silence, dryness, and still air. At first, they celebrate the quiet. They call it freedom. But over time, the absence of sound becomes haunting. The stillness becomes punishment. That's what your silence becomes to them, a haunting peace they can't recreate no matter how hard they try. In the beginning, they'll chase distraction. New faces, new voices, maybe even a new you. They'll convince themselves that replacing you is as simple as finding another person to text, another person to flatter their ego. They'll tell themselves, it's fine, I'll move on. But here's where life starts revealing the truth. They start drinking from new wells, only to realize the water isn't sweet anymore. They'll talk, they'll laugh, they'll flirt, but something will always be missing. That something was you. You see, they thought your value was in what you did, the way you showed up, the way you cared, the way you stayed. But your real value was in who you were, your calm, your energy, your loyalty. Those aren't things you can fake or replace. Those are rare. And when someone loses something rare, everything ordinary starts to feel empty. Let's break the lie they lived by. They told themselves love was easy to replace, that people were interchangeable, that connection was just chemistry. But chemistry fades, energy doesn't. And your energy, the patience, the empathy, the way you understood what wasn't being said, that can't be cloned. Every new person they meet becomes a mirror, not a cure. Because no matter how much they try to fill the gap, every voice they hear echoes yours. Every laugh reminds them of the peace they lost, and every silence sounds like the one you left behind. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Your presence was right, your love was true, and now everything they touch feels wrong, fake, hollow. They might post pictures, they might show off a new connection, but beneath the smiles lies that sinking feeling. This isn't it. It looks similar on the outside, but it doesn't feel the same. Because real connection leaves fingerprints on the soul, and yours are still there. Imagine someone who spends every night under a diamond sky. Then one day, the stars disappear. At first, they don't notice. They're too distracted by city lights. But eventually, the artificial glow fades, and they look up into darkness. That's when they remember what real beauty looked like. That's when they miss you. And my friends, that realization burns. Because it's not just about losing a person, it's about losing peace, losing safety, losing the feeling of being seen. That's the moment they realize you weren't replaceable, you were foundational, you were the light that made everything else make sense. But don't misunderstand this. Your worth doesn't rise because they regret losing you. It was always there. Their regret is just the echo of the truth you already knew. You were never common. You were never temporary. You were the rare one in a world full of copies. Seneca once said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." You were that gem. You endured the friction, the doubts, the disrespect, and instead of breaking, you became more refined. And now your silence shines in a way their noise never will. So when they realize they can't replace you, don't wait for apologies. Don't wait for confessions. You don't need closure from someone who closed their own door, because the only closure you need is peace. The peace of knowing that what's rare doesn't chase what's common. My friends, write this in the comments right now. I am rare. Say it, show it, live it. Because when you embrace that truth, you stop competing with noise. You stop lowering your standards to be understood. You stop trying to be replaceable. You become the silence that speaks louder than any words. And stay with me, because we're not done yet. We've seen how your silence exposed their chaos, how your absence became their storm, and how your irreplaceability turned into their regret. But next, we're going even deeper, into the one thing their pride can't handle, the moment they see you rise while they're still stuck in the ashes. And my friends, that's when their ego begins to burn. Number 5. Their ego burns, but your soul rises. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Marcus Aurelius spoke those words as a man who understood that real power is never loud. It's lived. And my friends, that's exactly what happens next. Because when you rise in silence, when you glow without explanation, when your peace starts shining louder than their noise, something inside them begins to burn. Their ego, the very thing that once made them feel untouchable, now becomes their cage. Imagine this: a bonfire roaring in the night. It's loud, it's bright, everyone gathers around it. But bonfires don't last forever. Eventually they fade, leaving nothing but smoke and ashes. Then, as the smoke clears, the sun begins to rise. Quietly, effortlessly. It doesn't need applause, it just transforms the entire sky. That, my friends, is you. They were the bonfire, flashy, loud, temporary. You are the sunrise, steady, pure, impossible to ignore. See, when you first went silent, they expected collapse. They expected you to break, to crawl back, to beg for closure. Their ego needed that story, because to their pride, you were the dependent one, the emotional one, the one who wouldn't survive without them. But silence shattered that illusion. You didn't crumble, you didn't chase, you grew, you glowed, you rose, and that rise, it burns them more than any revenge ever could. Let's be real for a second. They check on you. Maybe not openly, maybe not directly, but they do. They lurk, they scroll, they ask mutual friends, because their ego needs to know, did you fall or did you fly? And every time they see even a glimpse of your calm, your peace, your progress, it scorches them. Not because you hurt them, but because you proved they never had the power they thought they did. You see, they built their pride on the illusion of control. They thought they could pull your strings, provoke a reaction, and stay the center of your world. But when you stopped reacting, their puppet show ended. And now they're left staring at the empty stage, realizing the applause was never for them, it was for your strength. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And my friends, that's exactly why your silence is so powerful. You mastered yourself. You stopped chasing validation. You stopped explaining your worth. You stopped making noise just to be noticed. You no longer needed their approval to feel alive. That kind of control, that kind of calm, that's freedom. And nothing threatens a fragile ego more than someone who no longer needs it. But let's be honest, rising isn't easy. It's not glamorous. It's lonely at first. You'll have nights when you wonder if they even notice, if they even care. You'll have moments when the silence feels too heavy, when the urge to prove them wrong comes knocking at your door. But resist it, my friends, because real growth doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself over time. Every day you choose peace over pride, you rise higher. Every time you hold your tongue when your ego wants to roar, you become stronger. Think of an eagle. It doesn't waste its time fighting crows. It doesn't swoop down into chaos just to prove its strength. It rises higher, where the air is too thin for the crows to follow. That's what your silence did. It lifted you out of reach. They can't provoke what's no longer available. They can't compete with what no longer plays the same game. You didn't win by fighting. You won by ascending. Now here's the truth they'll never admit. Out loud, they'll say you've changed. They'll call you cold, distant, different. But inside, they know. They know the peace you carry now is the peace they tried to destroy. They know the glow on your face is the one they tried to dim. They know your calm isn't arrogance, it's evolution. And that realization stings more than anything you could ever say. Because nothing bruises the ego like watching the person it once tried to break become untouchable. My friends, don't chase that satisfaction. Don't wait for their apology. Don't crave their recognition. Their ego burning is not your goal. It's just the side effect of your growth. Your focus is your peace, your progress, your purpose. Because when you rise above, you don't just prove them wrong, you prove yourself right. You show the world that pain can polish you, not poison you. That silence can heal you, not hide you. That loss can teach you how to win differently. So write this in the comments right now. I rise higher. Say it like a promise. Show it to yourself. Show it to the world. Because every time you declare it, you remind yourself that your story isn't about revenge. It's about rebirth. And stay with me, my friends, because we're not done yet. We've seen how their ego burns when your soul rises, but what comes next is even deeper. Regret, the slow, silent fire that always arrives too late, the one that keeps them awake long after you've found peace. And that's exactly where we're going next. Number 6. Regret always arrives too late. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Seneca wrote those words long ago, and my friends, they've never been truer than in the moment regret begins to bite. Because regret doesn't knock politely. It doesn't ask permission to enter. It creeps in when the world goes quiet, when the laughter fades, when the mask slips. Regret is the ghost they thought they'd never see again, and it always arrives too late. Picture this. They're lying awake at night, phone in hand, scrolling through meaningless conversations. The room is dark. The glow of the screen flickers across their face. They're surrounded by people, yet feel completely alone. Every message, every laugh, every distraction, it's all noise now. Because deep down, something feels missing. And no matter how many times they swipe, they can't escape the thought whispering in the back of their mind. You. That's regret. It doesn't roar. It whispers. And its whisper cuts deeper than any scream. When you walked away, they didn't feel it right away. At first, they were relieved. Free. They told themselves it was better this way. They performed happiness like actors on stage, smiling for the crowd, laughing for show. But what they didn't realize is that pretending peace isn't the same as having it. And when the curtain fell, the silence that followed became unbearable. Because that's when they saw what they really lost. Someone who stayed, someone who cared, someone who gave without keeping score. You see, regret doesn't bloom in the chaos. It grows in the quiet. It's patient. It waits until the noise dies down, until the ego runs out of excuses, until they've burned through every distraction. Then it appears, uninvited, holding a mirror to their soul. And that mirror, my friends, doesn't flatter. It reflects every lie they told themselves, every chance they wasted, every time they thought they could hurt you and still keep you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The loss of what is no loss to a man is no loss at all." But here's the truth. They lost something that mattered. They just didn't realize it until it was gone. They thought your presence was guaranteed. They thought your forgiveness had no end. They mistook your loyalty for dependence. And when you stopped giving, when you stopped chasing, when your silence became permanent, they finally understood the cost. But by then, the door had already closed. Now, regret plays tricks on them. It doesn't show up as guilt right away. It shows up as confusion, as emptiness, as every relationship that feels shallow, every conversation that feels forced, every person who doesn't understand them the way you did. They'll tell themselves they've moved on, that they're fine, but that quiet ache in the middle of the night, that's the sound of truth. Let's break the lie right here, folks. They didn't lose you because you stopped loving them. They lost you because they kept testing the limits of your love, thinking you'd never reach the end. They thought you'd keep pouring from a well they never refilled. But when you finally went silent, they realized something they never considered before. Your patience wasn't endless, and your peace was never for sale. Imagine someone holding a priceless gem in their hand, but treating it like glass. They drop it, thinking it's unbreakable. When it shatters, they freeze. They search the floor, pick up the pieces, but no matter how carefully they try, they can't put it back together again. That's what regret looks like. It's not just loss, it's realization. The realization that they destroyed something rare because they couldn't see its value while it was whole. And my friends, that's the cruel truth about regret. It never comes when you're waiting for it. It comes when you've already healed, when your heart no longer flinches at their name, when your peace has become too sacred to disturb. That's when regret knocks on their door. But by that time, you're already gone. Not out of bitterness, but out of growth. You've moved on, and they're left staring at the door you once stood in front of, wishing they'd never closed it. Seneca also said, "Life is long if you know how to use it." And that's the irony, isn't it? They had time, they had chances, they had you, but they wasted all three. Now, the days feel longer for them, not because time changed, but because emptiness stretches it out. Regret slows everything down. It turns every memory into a replay, every silence into a reminder. But here's where your strength shines brightest, my friends. Regret is no longer yours to carry. It's not your burden, not your business, not your closure. Let them sit in it. Let them learn from it. Because your silence was never about punishment. It was about protection. You didn't go quiet to make them suffer. You went quiet to stop suffering yourself. And that right there is your victory. So write this in the comments right now. I move forward. Say it, claim it, show it to the world around you, because their regret belongs to the past, but your peace belongs to the future. You're not waiting for them to change. You've already changed. And stay with me, because we're not finished yet. We've seen how regret haunts them when it's too late, but next, we're stepping into the truth that seals your transformation, the moment you realize you never needed revenge, because peace itself was the justice all along. Number 7. Revenge was never needed. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Marcus Aurelius said that, my friends, and it might just be one of the hardest truths you'll ever have to swallow, because after being hurt, betrayed, or disrespected, the mind screams for justice. The heart aches for payback. You want them to feel what you felt, to see what they destroyed, to regret the way they made you crawl. But the irony of revenge is this: the longer you hold on to it, the more it poisons you. You can't heal while still hoping someone else hurts. Imagine this: you're walking through life carrying a bucket of fire, waiting for the perfect moment to throw it at the one who wronged you. But as you wait, as you carry that fire, your hands start to burn. The smoke chokes you before it ever touches them. That's what revenge does. It tricks you into believing you're in control while quietly consuming your peace from the inside out. And peace, my friends, is far too expensive to waste on bitterness. You see, they expected anger. They expected you to clap back, to expose them, to argue, to post, to lash out. That's how they stay relevant, by keeping the drama alive. But when you didn't take the bait, when you chose silence instead of shouting, you did something far more powerful than revenge. You ended the game entirely. You starved their ego of what it needed most: attention. Epictetus once said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." Think about that. Every time you respond to chaos with chaos, you give permission for the cycle to continue. But when you don't respond at all, when you walk away with grace instead of rage, you teach a lesson that words could never express. You show that your peace is no longer up for negotiation. You're not pretending to be unbothered. You are unbothered. Let's break a few lies right here. Lie number 1. Revenge brings closure. No, it doesn't. It keeps you tied to the same pain you're trying to escape. Lie number 2. Silence makes you look weak. Wrong again. Silence makes you dangerous, because no one knows what peace looks like until you stop reacting. Lie number 3. Forgiveness means they win. No, forgiveness means you stop losing sleep over what's already done. You stop carrying poison hoping someone else drinks it. Think of life like a battlefield. They threw stones, words, insults, anything to pull you back into the fight. And for a while, you may have swung back. You may have shouted, cried, explained, begged. But then one day, something changed. You dropped your sword. You walked off the battlefield. And that silence, that refusal to play their game anymore, that's what defeated them. Because now, every time they try to fight you, they're only swinging at their own shadow. My friends, revenge feels tempting because it feels like control. But peace, that's true control. Peace means they can no longer reach you. Peace means you've become untouchable. And when they see that, when they realize nothing they do can shake you anymore, that's when their ego begins to burn. That's the justice you never had to plan. Because silence is justice. Growth is justice. Moving on is justice. Marcus Aurelius also said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." And that's exactly what you've become. You stopped arguing about fairness, about closure, about what they deserve. You simply became everything they couldn't break: strong, peaceful, grounded, whole. That's how you win, not by hurting them, but by refusing to be hurt any longer. And yes, it's hard. It's hard to walk away when every part of you wants to scream. It's hard to stay calm when they're still throwing stones. It's hard to be the mountain while they're shaking the ground. But that's what makes it powerful. Anyone can fight. It takes wisdom to rise. It takes strength to say, "I'm done explaining." It takes courage to realize your peace is the loudest revenge you'll ever need. So, my friends, if you're still holding on to that anger, that fire, that need to prove your worth, let it go. You don't need revenge to heal. You just need peace. You don't need closure from them. You need acceptance within yourself. Because the moment you stop seeking revenge, you stop living in the past. And when you stop living in the past, your future finally opens its doors. Write this in the comments right now. I choose peace. Say it with conviction. Show it to yourself. Show it to the world around you. Because those 3 words are your freedom. Those 3 words are your armor. Those 3 words mean you've graduated from pain into power. And if this message spoke to your soul, if it reminded you that your silence is your crown and your peace is your victory, then press that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to this channel. Because, my friends, what's coming next isn't just healing, it's transformation. This is your season of peace, power, and purpose. Let them burn in regret while you rise in silence.